I want to talk about Sinead O'Connor. Sinead O'Connor has been hard to shake from my mind this past week. And yes, this is a segment about borderline personality disorder. It's obvious, it's really undeniably obvious, that O'Connor was a severely compromised borderline. As you know, many of you longtime listeners, my mother is a borderline and also a narcissist. One of the goals of my years-long therapeutic work with my longtime therapist, early on in his words, was to develop empathy about my mother. And that doesn't mean what it sounds like on the surface. He didn't mean, and he doesn't mean that I should feel bad for her, that I should actively feel and express sympathy toward her, or that it somehow makes it okay that she warped and distorted her children from birth, which is what she did. To me, as her firstborn son, my mother was my worst tormentor, the worst tormentor I had in my life. She formed my mind and my character with that mistreatment and abuse from an early age. What empathy means in this context is understanding, not sympathy, not excuse making. It means understanding that were I or you in her shoes, might I or you have become who she became? How did it happen? What broke her in a way that compelled her to break her children? I'm making progress on this, but I often have to approach it obliquely. I approach it through avatars of my mother, by wearing dark glasses so that I can look at her eclipse without going blind. And I've done this through my mental relationship and my fanhood around Joan Crawford, another borderline abusive mother. I've done it through my decades-long obsession with Madonna, who is also obviously a cluster B woman. It's not a reasonable request to make of a child of an abusive parent to ask him to directly feel sympathy and complete emotional detachment with equanimity. When the most important person in your life hurts you as badly as my mother did, there will always be a personal, deeply sore spot for me that can't be washed away and it can't be therapized away. And anger at this can and does still come back. Even though I'm not globally angry 24 hours a day at my mother, as I was the first year to 2 years after my break with her, it can come back. But I can walk around my mother psychologically with people like Sinead O'Connor. Since her death about a week and a half ago, which is almost certainly a suicide, not verified, but almost certainly is, I felt really great sadness for her and a lot of pity. Look what you could have been. Look how beautiful and ungodly talented you were. I've been equally angry at her and equally disgusted with her. She abused her children, and that's obvious. Her derangement played out in public over decades. She screamed, she cried hysterically, she did it on camera, she did it on people's television shows, she did it on her own YouTube channel. She gave in to paranoid persecution fantasies very frequently, and she changed her name and religion time and time and time again. Imagine what it was like for her children. You know what their emotional world must have been like. And, of course, very tragically, her 17-year-old son killed himself last year as well. It should be obvious to anybody that Sinead O'Connor had a terminal case of borderline personality disorder, but as usual, most of society doesn't know what this is and very few people are talking about it. Someone, however, is, and someone who writes very well with keen insight. I recommend to you the Substack article I'm going to excerpt from the blog Millennial Woes. It's titled, "In the Absence of Order, the Life, Self-Destruction, and Death of Sinead O'Connor." I will link that full article in the notes below this video. From the article. The Irish singer-songwriter Sinead O'Connor has died. She was 56. The cause of death has not yet been revealed, but I would be very surprised if it was not suicide. When the news first broke, I was quite shocked. For the rest of the evening, I remained in this state. Not depressed, but a bit shaken. This was a celebrity death that mattered to me in a way that few have done. This is a man writing, by the way, just so you know. I wasn't even a fan. Most of her music isn't my kind of thing, but still, it was clear to me that a powerful and unique creative voice was gone from the world. I was probably aware of Sinead O'Connor dimly from when she first became famous in the late 1980s, but I was just a small child then. My first memory of being consciously aware of her is from 1994. I encountered her song, Thank You for Hearing Me. It is a truly beautiful piece. To describe it would be clumsy, so I will simply suggest that the song be given a chance. It can speak for itself as a work of art. And art is what Sinead O'Connor created. Her work is not bubblegum pop music, nor is it the dumb rebellion of so much rock music. It is something sincere. In the modern parlance, it comes from a place of honesty. People use that phrase all the time now. I speak my truth, but I think in the case of Sinead O'Connor, it's actually accurate. End quote. For those of you who don't know, O'Connor's first hit in the 1990s, early 90s, was a song written by Prince called Nothing Compares to You, and it was aptly named. We have never heard a voice with her vocal quality. It's extraordinary, it's raw, it's aching, and it's beautiful. She was innately gifted. She caused a raging controversy in 1992 when she went on Saturday Night Live and ripped up a picture of the Pope to protest sexual abuse in the Catholic Church. Sinead was in fact canceled in 1992 to exactly the same degree that you see cancellation today. It was no softer. The only difference with today is that cancellation today is so normalized and indiscriminate. And for the record, I believe Sinead O'Connor that she was abused by her mother and by clerics in the Catholic institutions that she was placed in. It's completely believable, and this woman bore the obvious psychological scars of early childhood abuse and sexual abuse. More from this article. Quote, they said one thing, that is the mainstream music industry, they said one thing, she did the opposite. This behavior shows a strong spirit, but it is characteristic of a personality disorder which would loom large in O'Connor's life and will crop up again and again in this essay. Borderline personality disorder. The common misconception about BPD is that it means someone is on the borderline of having a personality disorder. This is not so. It is a disorder, one in which the person, usually a woman, has a dysfunctional relationship with borders and boundaries. Perhaps she got far too little discipline as a child, or far too much. Next quote. Or perhaps she had endured a lot of physical or sexual abuse, rupturing her ability to connect meaningfully with other people. Undermining her self-image could result in her having a warped understanding of where she ends and other people begin. O'Connor claimed to have been viciously and relentlessly abused by her mother between the ages of 8 and 13. She was physically and verbally and psychologically, spiritually, and emotionally abusive. During this time, her father was struggling to gain custody and rescue his children from their sadistic, unhinged, Valium-addicted mother. Now, the author spends some bit of time considering that some of O'Connor's siblings say things didn't happen that way, and like many, I think that the author may not understand that siblings in these families routinely remember things differently and experience them differently. Joan Crawford's second set of adopted children, after Christina and Christopher, denied all the allegations that Christina, the first child, had made, and much of which they could not have witnessed and known about because they hadn't been born and they weren't in the house. Until I was 41, I denied to everyone that my mother had ever abused me. I said, and this is a verbatim quote, "My mother is a saint." We are children of the lie, to borrow from M. Scott Peck, and we usually don't know we're lying. We're not doing it consciously. But we're broken, and we're lying to ourselves to protect an eggshell-thin psyche. A little more from the article. But her claims are very dramatic. From her 2021 memoirs, my earliest memory was her telling me I shouldn't be born. She didn't want me. She didn't want girls. She wanted me to be a boy. She treated me like a boy. She chopped off my hair. Whenever she beat me, which was daily, she made me take my clothes off and lie naked on the floor, my arms and legs open. She would attack my abdomen, wanting to burst my womb and destroy my reproductive system. She wanted me to stop being a female. That's Sinead O'Connor. Yes, these are very dramatic claims. I do not know if they're true, but they are absolutely believable. They are not unbelievable. There are mothers like this, and normal people from normal homes have a very hard time believing it. But have they never once in their lives read a story of child abuse in the paper? Have they never watched Dateline, never watched a true crime documentary? Is it possible that Sinead O'Connor exaggerated? Sure. But that propensity, the inclination to do that, comes from somewhere, and that somewhere is almost certainly severe child abuse, even if it isn't exactly as described. The Millennial Woes article is really long, but it's worth every minute of your attention. And Sinead O'Connor's unstable identity, I think, couldn't have been more obvious. In 2017, she changed her name to Magda David to escape what she called the patriarchal slave name. Here's Magda, a picture of her on the Dr. Phil show. And then the next year, she converted to Islam and changed her name to Shuhada David. And here we have a picture of her in this identity. Over the years, Sinead O'Connor raged on video for the world to see, from her home, on television shows, crying, screaming, sometimes literally rending her garments. She said horrible things about her family and about her own children. She appears to me to have been one of those borderlines who was prone to frequent psychotic breaks where they do actually depart from reality. Audience, this is borderline personality disorder. It is to be sinner and saint, victim and abuser. I've complained many times about how we always refer to those who, quote, suffer from borderline personality disorder, and we're referring to the borderline, but we're never referring to the children or the family. I still think we give too much sympathy to the abuser and not enough to the victims. But Sinead O'Connor did suffer. There's no doubt that she suffered. My mother suffered, and she suffers still. Yet the children of these women also suffered from their choices and from their incompetence and their inadequacy as parents. It's not something I can forgive, even though I can now better understand it. And wherever Sinead O'Connor is, or if she's nowhere at all, I hope that she is, in fact, resting in peace.